The plane hadn't even landed when Lily's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen, exhaustion from her work trip still weighing on her. Thomas. My mother took care of a problem for you. No need to thank her. A knot tightened in her stomach. She had spent the last 7 days buried in meetings, handling deadlines, and longing for the comfort of home. But something about that message sent a cold shiver down her spine. What problem? By the time she reached her apartment, her hands were clammy, her heart drumming against her ribs. She turned the key, stepped inside, and instantly, everything felt wrong. The place was too clean. The faint scent of lavender detergent lingered in the air, masking something unnatural. The silence was suffocating. Lily set down her suitcase and walked into the living room. That's when she noticed it, absence. An emptiness that made her chest constrict. Milow. Her eyes darted around frantically. No food bowl, no scattered cat toys, no lazy, golden-furred body curled up on the couch where he always waited for her. Her pulse spiked as she rushed to the bedroom. Nothing. The bed, untouched. The litter box, gone. It was as if Milow had never existed. "Thomas!" she called, storming toward the hallway. That's when she saw her. Margaret stood near the doorway, arms crossed, lips curved into a smirk so smug it made Lily's blood boil. "I see you noticed," Margaret said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "You always complained about the fur. So I resolved the issue." Lily's breath hitched. "What the hell are you talking about?" Margaret tilted her head. "I sent him to a shelter. He's gone." The words crashed over Lily like a wave of ice. The floor beneath her felt unsteady. Gone. Her lungs burned as she struggled to inhale. She turned to Thomas, who stood by the kitchen counter, avoiding her gaze. "Tell me she's lying," Lily pleaded, voice trembling. "Tell me Milow is okay." Thomas finally looked up, but there was no reassurance in his expression, only hesitation. "She's not lying," he muttered. A roaring noise filled Lily's ears, her hands clenched into fists. "You let this happen." "Lily, it's done," Margaret interrupted, clearly pleased with herself. "You work too much to take care of a pet properly. Honestly, I did you a favor." Lily's body trembled. Her voice came out sharp, cutting through the tension like a blade. "A favor? You stole my cat!" Margaret let out a chuckle, shaking her head. "Such dramatics!" A feral rage surged through Lily. She took a step closer, her entire body thrumming with fury. "Where is he?" "I already told you," Margaret said, shrugging. "A nice shelter across town. I'm sure they'll find him a better home soon." Lily's stomach twisted. Her mind raced. Milow was out there, alone, scared, and she wasn't even home to protect him. She turned to Thomas again, her voice now desperate. "How could you let this happen?" His jaw tightened, his fingers curled into his palms, but instead of answering, he dropped his gaze once more. That was it. The breaking point. Lily shook her head in disgust, blinking back furious tears. "I trusted you, and you let her." She pointed at Margaret, voice raw. "Take away the one thing that's been with me for 5 years." Margaret exhaled dramatically, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, Lily. It's just a cat." Lily's breath caught. Thomas must have sensed the storm brewing in her because he finally spoke, his voice low. "Lily, it's not just about the cat." Her blood ran cold. "What?" Thomas hesitated, then stepped closer, lowering his voice as if afraid of being overheard. "My mother, she didn't just do this to get rid of Milow," he whispered. "She did this because she wants to get rid of you." Lily's heartbeat slammed against her ribs. Margaret, standing just feet away, smiled. Some mothers pretend they want the best for their sons. Others just want to destroy everything in their path. Lily barely registered the icy wind slapping against her face as she sped toward the shelter. Her hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white with fury and desperation. Thomas's words still echoed in her head. She didn't just do this to get rid of Milow. She did this because she wants to get rid of you. She couldn't think about that now. Not yet. Milow was out there, alone, abandoned. Every second wasted was a second too long. The shelter's neon sign flickered against the night sky as she screeched to a stop in the parking lot. Lily bolted out of the car and ran inside, her breath shallow, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The woman at the front desk looked up, startled. "My cat," Lily gasped. "Milow. He was brought here by Margaret." She practically spat the name. "A few days ago. I need to take him home." The woman's expression softened, but something about her hesitation made Lily's stomach drop. "Oh, I'm so sorry," she said carefully. "But Milow was adopted yesterday." The world tilted. Lily blinked, her pulse hammering in her ears. "What?" The woman frowned, flipping through some paperwork. "Yes, he was taken by a new owner. The adoption was processed quickly." No, this has to be a mistake," Lily said, her voice cracking. "I need his new owner's information. I need to get him back." The woman hesitated. "Legally, Lily's patience snapped. "Please." Something in her voice must have struck a chord, because after a tense pause, the woman exhaled and lowered her voice. "The adoption was unusual," she admitted. Lily's chest tightened. "Unusual how?" The woman hesitated. "The person who took Milow. They weren't looking for a pet." "What do you mean?" Lily's breath hitched. The woman pursed her lips, then slid a piece of paper across the counter. "This is all I can give you." Lily's eyes darted to the paper. An address. She grabbed it, heart pounding. "Thank you." As she turned to leave, her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, expecting another pathetic excuse from Thomas. Instead, the message was from an unknown number. "You're on the right track, but you won't like what you find." A cold shiver ran down her spine. The explosion at home. Lily didn't bother knocking when she stormed back into the apartment. Thomas was sitting on the couch, running a hand through his hair, looking as guilty as ever. Margaret sat across from him, casually sipping tea like she hadn't just turned her life upside down. "Where is he?" Lily's voice shook with rage. Margaret sighed dramatically. "Did you really go chasing after that filthy animal?" Lily's hands clenched into fists. "That filthy animal is my family," Margaret arched a brow. "And yet, your husband didn't seem too concerned about it." Lily turned to Thomas, eyes burning. "You knew." Thomas swallowed hard. You knew she got rid of him," she seethed. "You knew where he was taken, and you let it happen." Thomas looked away. "I didn't want to be caught between you two. Caught between us." Lily let out a humorless laugh. "Your mother threw my pet into the street like trash, and you just stood there." Margaret smirked, sipping her tea. "You married a mama's boy, dear. What did you expect?" Something inside Lily cracked. She turned back to Thomas, voice trembling. "You were supposed to protect me." Thomas's eyes flickered with something. Guilt, regret. It didn't matter anymore. "You didn't even try," she whispered. Thomas exhaled, rubbing his temples. "Lily, I made a mistake." "No," she said, voice ice cold. "You made a choice." Silence filled the room. Then Margaret let out a sigh, feigning boredom. "Enough of this melodrama. The cat is gone. Move on." Lily turned, gaze burning into her. "What is your problem?" she asked, voice sharp. "Why do you hate me so much?" Margaret leaned back, smiling. "Hate you? Oh, sweetheart, this isn't about hate. It's about fixing my son's mistakes." Lily's nails dug into her palms. "Excuse me." Margaret's expression didn't waver. "Thomas has always been impulsive. He gets infatuated easily. But infatuations fade, and She placed a hand over her chest, voice dripping with false concern. "Always clean up his messes." Lily stared at her, realization crashing down like a landslide. This wasn't just about Milow. This wasn't just about irritation. Margaret wanted her gone. And Thomas had let it happen. Lily's chest tightened. For 5 years, she had been blind. Margaret stood, smoothing down her blouse. "Face it, dear. You don't belong here." Lily's phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You need to move fast. He's not safe." Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs. She spun on her heel, grabbing her coat. "Where are you going?" Thomas called after her. Lily didn't even look back. "To bring my real family home." The address burned in Lily's hands as she drove through the dimly lit streets. Every turn of the wheel felt like a battle against the storm inside her. Milow had been taken by someone who wasn't just looking for a pet, someone who wanted him. Why? Her phone vibrated again. Another message from the unknown number. "You're close. Be careful." Her pulse quickened. The street led her to a quiet, run-down part of town. The house at the address was modest, with peeling paint and a dim porch light flickering in the night. Lily killed the engine and got out, heart hammering against her ribs. She climbed the steps and knocked. Footsteps. The door creaked open. A woman stood before her, early 40s, tired eyes, cautious stance. But she wasn't just any woman. She was expecting her. "You must be Lily," the woman said. Lily's throat tightened. "Where is my cat?" The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she studied Lily, as if deciding something. Then she stepped aside. "Come in." Every fiber in Lily's body screamed no. But Milow was out there. She stepped inside. The house smelled of lavender and something else. Something metallic, like old pennies. Lily's eyes swept the small living room. No sign of Milow. The woman folded her arms. "You should know that Margaret isn't acting alone." Lily's stomach clenched. "What?" "She's been planning this for months," the woman said. "Getting rid of you was always the goal. Milow was just an excuse." Lily's skin prickled. "Why are you telling me this?" The woman hesitated. Then she exhaled, as if making peace with something. "Because I was paid to take Milow," she admitted. "But when I saw how much you were fighting for him, I knew I couldn't go through with it." Lily's pulse pounded. "Where is he?" The woman hesitated. Then her phone rang. Lily's. She snatched it up, hands shaking. Blocked number. She answered. A voice, low and distorted, sent a shiver down her spine. "Your cat was never the problem, Lily. You are." Lily's breath hitched. "What do you want?" she demanded. A low chuckle. "You don't get it yet, do you? This isn't just about the cat. It's about making sure you don't exist in Thomas's life anymore." Her grip tightened on the phone. "Who are you?" Silence. Then, in a voice dripping with amusement, "Ask Margaret." The line went dead. Lily's skin burned with rage. She turned to the woman, who was already pulling out a slip of paper. "Here. A second address." "Your cat is here," the woman said quietly. "But you need to move fast." Lily grabbed the paper and bolted for the door. Her hands trembled as she sped down the empty streets. Margaret had planned this. She had orchestrated everything. But what haunted Lily most was the voice on the phone. Who was really behind this? She turned onto a quiet road, barely stopping as she pulled up to the new address. A house loomed before her, larger, colder. A single light was on inside. She got out, heart in her throat. And then, a shadow moved in the window. Her pulse spiked. She marched to the door, banging against it with both fists. A few seconds later, it opened, and there, standing in the doorway, was someone she never expected. Her blood ran cold. "You?" The door creaked open, and Lily's breath caught in her throat. Standing in the dim light was a man she recognized instantly. Gabriel, Thomas's childhood friend. Someone Margaret had always adored. Lily's stomach twisted. Of course. Gabriel leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed, expression unreadable. Took you long enough. Her voice came out sharp. Where is he? Gabriel sighed, stepping aside. Come in. Lily hesitated. She had trusted too many people in this mess already. But Milow was in there. She stepped inside. The air smelled of wood polish and something familiar, something warm. Her heart pounded as she turned the corner. And then, she saw him. Curled up in a blanket on the couch, his golden fur slightly ruffled, but otherwise unharmed. Milow. A breath she hadn't realized she was holding escaped her lips as she rushed forward, scooping him into her arms. His tiny body trembled against her chest before he let out a familiar, exhausted purr. Tears stung her eyes. I've got you, she whispered. You're safe now. Gabriel cleared his throat. He's fine. Just scared. Lily turned to him, fury simmering beneath her relief. Why do you have him? Gabriel sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Because Margaret asked me to. Her jaw clenched. Of course she did. I didn't know she was sending him to a shelter, Gabriel continued, shaking his head. She just told me to get him after he was adopted. She said you wouldn't want him back after he was gone. Lily's grip on Milow tightened. And you believed her? Gabriel hesitated. No, he admitted. That's why I didn't take him to her. I kept him here. Lily's anger burned hotter. So you're saying you saved him? After helping take him in the first place? Gabriel met her gaze, unflinching. I made a mistake, but I wasn't going to let him end up back in her hands. Lily exhaled sharply. Why does she hate me so much? Gabriel hesitated. Then, finally, he said, she doesn't hate you. She's afraid of losing control. Lily's stomach turned. Control over what? He sighed. Over Thomas. Over everything. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't about the cat. It never had been. Margaret didn't want to remove Milow from the picture. She wanted to test something. To see how far she could go. To see if Lily would just give up. Her hands shook. She held Milow tighter. I need to go. Gabriel stepped forward, his voice low. Lily. She cut him off. I don't care what excuse you have. You helped her, and I will fix this. With that, she turned on her heel and walked out. When Lily burst into the apartment, Margaret was exactly where she had left her. Sipping tea, smirking, waiting. Thomas was standing near the kitchen, tense, eyes flicking to her and then away. Lily stormed toward them, Milow still in her arms, voice like a blade. You don't get to decide what I love. Margaret sighed, placing her cup down with a delicate clink. You found him. How persistent. Lily's nails dug into her palms. No games. Tell me the truth, Margaret. Thomas stepped forward. Lily! She shot him a look so sharp he stopped mid-step. Then, locking eyes with Margaret, she asked the one question that had been burning inside her. What are you so afraid of? For the first time, Margaret's smirk faltered. Just for a second. Then, she laughed softly. You think this is about fear? Yes, Lily shot back. Because you don't just dislike me, you need me gone. Silence. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. Mom. Margaret finally spoke, her voice measured. Thomas always had a habit of getting attached to the wrong people. Lily's breath hitched. Wrong people? Margaret took another sip of tea, then met her gaze. I fix his mistakes. The words hit like a slap. A sick realization crawled up Lily's spine. She wasn't the first. She clenched her jaw. How many? Thomas stiffened. Lily! How many, Thomas? She demanded. He hesitated. Margaret smiled faintly. Lily inhaled sharply. You never planned on letting me stay, did you? Margaret tilted her head, mock sympathy in her eyes. Thomas falls in love too quickly. He doesn't think. She set down her cup. I do. Lily's pulse thundered. And Milow. Margaret's eyes gleamed. A test. Everything inside Lily snapped. Her voice was steady, but it cut through the air like ice. I am not one of your mistakes to erase. Margaret simply watched her, unfazed. That's up to Thomas. Lily turned to him. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then, finally, he did. He looked at his mother. And then, for the first time in his life, he stood between them. You don't control me, he said. Margaret's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Lily's chest tightened. Then prove it. Thomas exhaled. What do you want me to do? Lily didn't hesitate. I want you to tell her she doesn't own you anymore. Silence stretched thick between them. Then, Thomas turned to Margaret, voice steady. I love you, Mom, he said. But this ends now. Margaret's jaw tightened. But she said nothing. Lily took a step back, holding Milow close. I'm leaving. Thomas turned to her. Lily. She shook her head. You let her do this. You let her test me like I was disposable. His face fell. She inhaled sharply. If you want me to stay, you have to prove that I'm not. She walked toward the door, gripping Milow. Behind her, Margaret's voice came soft but sharp. I wouldn't count on him, dear. Lily turned, meeting her gaze one last time. Then she walked out. The apartment door closed behind her, but Lily didn't stop. Her breath came fast as she walked down the hallway, Milow trembling in her arms. The weight of everything crashed onto her at once. The betrayal, the manipulation, the fact that, for years, she had lived in a home that was never truly hers. Margaret had tested her, and Thomas had let it happen. The realization stung more than she was prepared for. Milow let out a soft, uncertain meow. Lily swallowed the lump in her throat. It's okay, she whispered, stroking his fur. We're going to be okay. Were they? Her fingers tightened around her keys as she reached the car. She hesitated, staring at the cold metal in her palm. Where do I go now? The life she had fought to build felt like a fragile illusion, shattered in one night. She had a choice to make. Stay and demand Thomas prove himself, or finally walk away. The answer wasn't easy, and she wasn't sure if she had the strength to face it alone. She barely had time to sit in the driver's seat before she heard footsteps behind her. Lily, wait! Thomas, she sighed, squeezing her eyes shut. For a moment, she considered driving away, leaving him standing there. But she didn't. She turned, looking up at him. Why? She asked, voice raw. Why did you let her do this to me? Thomas exhaled, rubbing his temples. I thought I could keep the peace. Lily let out a bitter laugh. You don't keep the peace by letting someone destroy the person you claim to love. He flinched but didn't argue. Instead, he swallowed hard and said, I know. Lily studied him. Then what are you doing here? Thomas hesitated. Then, for the first time that night, his expression was truly desperate. I don't want to lose you. A sharp ache bloomed in her chest. Then prove it, she said quietly. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. Not with words, Thomas, she interrupted, her voice firm. I don't want apologies. I don't want excuses. I want to know if you're ready to stand up for us. His jaw tensed. I told her this ends now. Lily shook her head. That's not enough. Thomas's brows furrowed. What do you mean? She exhaled, gripping the steering wheel. If you want me to believe you, you have to do something you've never done before. His voice was hesitant. What? Lily met his gaze, her next words crystal clear. Walk away from her. Thomas froze. She let the words settle, waiting for him to process what she already knew. Margaret would never stop, and if he stayed under her control, she would always find a way to make sure Lily never belonged. This wasn't just about a cat. It never was. This was about control. And Thomas had to choose. His voice trailed off. His hands curled into fists at his sides. Lily didn't move, didn't push him. This wasn't a choice she could make for him. Minutes stretched between them. Then, "I'll do it," he said. Lily's breath caught. Thomas took a step forward. His voice, once unsure, now rang with certainty. "I'll leave." Lily's pulse pounded. "You mean that?" Thomas nodded. "I love my mother. But I love you more." Something inside Lily cracked open. A part of her wanted to believe him. But could she? 2 days passed. Lily stayed in a hotel with Milow, her emotions a whirlwind. She told Thomas she needed time. She needed to see if he would really follow through. And then, on the 3rd day, she got a message. "Thomas, I moved out. I'm done letting her control me." Lily's breath hitched. For the first time in years, Thomas had taken a real stand. And yet, she wasn't sure if it was enough. That night, he knocked on her hotel door. She opened it slowly, heart hammering. Thomas stood there, looking exhausted but determined. "I did it," he said. "Now it's your turn." Lily swallowed. "My turn?" He nodded. "To decide if you still want us." The words knocked the air from her lungs. She had fought so hard for this relationship. But now, she had to ask herself the hardest question of all. Was it worth saving? Her fingers brushed against Milow, who purred softly. She looked up at Thomas. And then, she made her choice. Some wars have winners, others only have survivors. Lily had survived. But what would she choose now? That's up to you, dear viewer. Would you forgive Thomas, or walk away forever? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story if it kept you on the edge of your seat.